विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनिति नामिने।
नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषा शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यादेशतारिणे नमस्ते सरस्वती
सरस्वती देवी गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे शून्यवादी अध्यात्मदेशतारिणी।
जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंदा श्री अद्वैता गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंदा
जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैता गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद।
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
हरे
Hare
कृष्ण
Krishna,
हरे कृष्ण
Hare Krishna,
कृष्ण
Krishna Krishna,
हरे हरे
Hare Hare,
हरे राम
Hare Ram,
राम
Hare Rama, Rama Rama,
हरे हरे
Hare Hare.
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
हरे
Hare
कृष्ण
Krishna,
हरे कृष्ण
Hare Krishna,
कृष्ण
Krishna Krishna,
हरे हरे
Hare Hare,
हरे राम
Hare Rama,
हरे राम
Hare Rama,
राम राम
Rama Rama,
हरे हरे
Hare Hare.
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
हरे
Hare
कृष्ण
Krishna,
हरे कृष्ण
Hare Krishna,
कृष्ण कृष्ण
Krishna Krishna,
हरे हरे
Hare Hare,
हरे राम
Hare Rama,
हरे राम
Hare
राम
Rama,
राम
Rama Rama,
हरे हरे
Hare Hare.
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम राम हरे हरे
हरे हरे
Hare
कृष्ण
Krishna, Hare
कृष्ण
Krishna,
कृष्ण हरे
Krishna
हरे
Krishna, Hare
हरे
Hare,
राम
Hare Rama, Hare
राम
Ram, Ram
हरे
Ram, Hare Hare.
हरे कृष्णा कृष्णा हरे 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 राम हरे हरे
हरे कृष्ण
Hare
कृष्ण
Krishna,
कृष्ण
Hare
हरे
Krishna,
हरे
Krishna
हरे
Krishna,
हरे
Hare
राम
Hare,
राम राम हरे
Ram
हरे
Ram.
हरे कृष्णा कृष्णा हरे 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 राम राम हरे हरे
Hare
Hare
Krishna,
Krishna,
Hare Krishna,
Hare
Krishna
Krishna,
Krishna,
Krishna
Hare
Krishna,
Hare,
Hare
Hare
Hare,
Hare
Hare Ram,
Ram,
Hare
Hare
Ram,
Ram,
Ram Ram,
Hare
Hare Hare.
Ram, Hare Hare.
Jai Gaura Hari
Oh,
Bol, Hari
Hari Bol,
Bol, Hari
Hari Bol.
Bol,
Hare
Jai Gaura
Ram,
Hari
Hare
Bol.
Hare. Nitai Gaura Hari
Nitai Gaura Hari
Bo.
Bol, Hari Bol,
Hari
Hari
Bo,
Bol,
Nitai
Nitai
Gaura
Gaura
Hari
Hari
Bo.
Bol.
Jai Srila Prabhupada.
No. Yeah, right.
Thank you, dear devotees, for joining online and also in person. Sridhar, for being here. Um, some of you may know that Deepak Prabhu is traveling to India. So for the next few weeks, you'll have to bear with me as I try to pick up where he left and continue on. So with that, let me share my screen. We will start with the Mangla Charan prayers. We can all recite together. Is it visible to everyone? Maybe make it a little bigger. Okay, let's start together. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana
चक्षुर्निमीलितं येन
Chakshurmilitam
तस्मै
Tasmai Shri Guruve Namah
नमः
Chaitanyamanovistam
चैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं
Sthapitam
येन भूतले स्वयं
Swayam
रूपेण कदा मह्यं
Padayam
ददाति
Dadati
स्वपदान्तिकम्
Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutam Shri Vaishnavam Shri Pam Sagrijatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvekam Savadhutam Satam
हरिजनसहितं
Krishna Chaitanya
कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं
Shri Radha Krishna
श्रीराधाकृष्णपादान्
Parama Sahagana
सकलनं ललितां
Shri Vishakha
श्रीविशाखान्वितां च
He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenabandhu
दीनबन्धो
Jagatpate
जगत्पते
Gopesha
गोपेशा गोपिका कान्ता
Gopikanta
राधाकान्ता
Radha
नमोऽस्तु ते
Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari
ईश्वरी
Vishadha
वृषभानुसुते
Sute
देवी प्रणमामि
Pranamami Hari
हरिप्रिये
Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa
कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव
sindhubhya
च
पतितानां
पतितानां पावनेभ्यो
पावनेभ्यो
वैष्णवेभ्यो
वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो
नमो
नमः जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु
प्रभु
नित्यानंद
नित्यानन्द
श्री
श्री
अद्वैता
अद्वैता
गदाधर
गदाधर श्रीवासदि
श्रीवासादि
गौरभक्तवृन्द
हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे हरे
हरे
राम
हरे राम
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 राम हरे हरे
हरे
हरे
कृष्णा कृष्ण
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 हरे
हरे हरे हरे राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण कृष्ण कृष्ण
हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. Okay, so let's begin. So which chapter are we in? We are doing chapter 5, right? It's called Karma Yoga, Action in Krishna Consciousness. So if you remember, which other chapter that we have done so far is also titled very, very similarly? Pop quiz.
Chapter third.
Yes, chapter 3rd. Let's look at the title. Chapter 3 is called Karma Yoga. And then chapter 5 is again called Karma Yoga, Action in Krishna Consciousness. So, any guesses as to why these two are different? What could be the difference?
First one is just introduction or the whole concept of karma yoga, whereas fifth chapter same thing in performing with Krishna consciousness. in devotion to Krishna.
Yes, kind of there, Prabhu. Yes, Karma Yoga in third chapter is related to action without any concept of Krishna consciousness in it, like you said. And then chapter 5 is more Karma Yoga. So action, again, karma means action, right? And what does yoga mean? How can action be yoga?
If it connecting with the God, it will become yoga.
Yeah, yes, Prabhu. Yoga means to connect, to link. The word yoga just means to connect and link. So if we have to link, we need two entities or two things to make a connection. So what are those two things? One is the living entity, the jiva, and the other is the soul. So the physical asanas and the other type of more popular yoga that we have heard about, the hot yoga, the hatha yoga, ashtanga yoga, all these different kinds of yogas which are more related to breath control and physical fitness are also yoga, although they are not used today to make a connection. They try to connect with yourself, right? It's more about connect with yourself, breathing, all those things. But actually that yoga also, the asana yoga, was also originally presented so that people, the yogis, could control their breath in such a way that they could spend more time in making the actual connection with the supreme. But we lost that portion where the connection with the supreme is, and it just became physical exercises and health and fitness. So karma yoga is also another type of yoga, which is through our actions we are trying to make the connection of ourselves with the supreme, right? So is my understanding correct that we covered up to 5 verses in this chapter? Yeah. Okay. So, um, so here in chapter 5, it begins with Arjuna asking a question. What is the question Arjuna is asking?
So
Whether
in chapter 3 and 4, we discuss about Karma Yoga and Gnana Yoga. Arjuna is again asking Krishna to help, which is the right path to choose for him.
Right. And so, Prabhuji, please continue.
And so that Mataji, I think that's how I connected it. And Krishna is
Okay.
helping him to select the path of karma while not worrying about, while being situated in Krishna, or like not worrying about the outcome.
Okay, okay. So this is the conclusion that Krishna will tell Arjun. But here in this first text, Arjuna is presenting a doubt. Let's read the translation. Arjuna said, "O Krishna, first of all, you asked me to renounce work. And then again, you recommended work with devotion. Now, will you kindly tell me definitely which of the two is more beneficial?" So, if we quickly go back to the fourth chapter, and this is very important because we need to understand um, how Bhagavad Gita is flowing, right? It's not just Krishna giving one way direction to Arjun, right? He is not just giving one way direction and Arjun is blindly following. As you can see, this is how our spiritual progress also happens. Only when we inquire, we learn. If we take one way direction, then many a times, especially after a discourse or a class or even hearing online, if there are no questions in the end, then either the speaker was really stupid or we didn't understand anything. So it's highly unlikely that there are no questions at the end of any class. Uh, Okay, that aside, so Arjuna is none of those, and Krishna is also none of those. So that's why we see that throughout the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is giving some instruction, and then Arjun asks back and says, "You said this and you said that. What about the reconciliation?" So here, let's quickly look at. So I went back to fourth chapter because we need to understand why Arjun is asking this question now again. So I'll go back a few verses here in text 39. No need to look at the whole Sanskrit and everything. Let's just look at the translation. So Krishna here is telling Arjun, a faithful man who is dedicated to transcendental knowledge and who subdues his senses is eligible to achieve such knowledge, and having achieved it, he quickly attains the supreme spiritual peace. So if you just try to take out the gist of this, what is Krishna telling Arjun? What does Arjun need to do? Yeah,
Nothing.
right. Obtain knowledge. That's what Krishna is telling. Now read here text 42. Therefore, the doubts which have arisen in your heart out of ignorance should be slashed by the weapon of knowledge. Armed with yoga, O Bharata, stand and fight. What is here Krishna telling Arjun to do? Hmm?
So
Knowledge acts as a sword of fire to
Yeah,
slay
but
any
then he
doubts.
is also saying, stand and fight. So he is in just 3 verses before, he's saying, try to gain knowledge. And then he is saying, act. So what Arjun is confused that at one point you are telling me to gain knowledge. So right now Arjun's dilemma is that he cannot see that how we can gain knowledge and then also act. He thinks those are two separate things. Either you gain knowledge and renounce, or you act. He doesn't see how those two can work in integration. And that's why his next question comes up in this text 1. He says, "Oh Krishna, first of all, you asked me to renounce work. Why? Because when you gain knowledge, in the previous chapter, in the third chapter, when Karma Yoga was talked about, it was more about how you gain knowledge, and then you understand that in Sanskrit it's called na iti, na iti, na iti. The Sankhya Yoga process is, and then it becomes neti, neti, neti. Not so neti means not this, not this. So through the process of Sankhya Yoga, through analytical study, you will realize that supreme is not this, not this, not the material world, not the earth, not the water, not the air, not the fire. So you start doing analytical study and you realize that supreme is not this, neti, neti, neti. And then eventually by renouncing everything, you come to that truth that who is the supreme. So he is now referring that first of all, you ask me to renounce work because that's how I gain knowledge. And then you recommend work with devotion. Now, will you tell me which one is better? So this is how the 5th chapter starts. So I think we covered all this already. We can quickly do a quick review. So basically here, now in this 5th chapter, Krishna is going to explain to Arjun how those two things can be reconciled. And sorry, I have to open my own Bhagavad Gita because as you can see, it's filled with notes. So without those notes, I cannot work. Yeah. So, like we said, Arjuna thinks that you cannot renounce work and also work with detachment. He thinks both of those are not an integration. So here, now starting with verse 2 through verse 7, you will see that the way Krishna is going to answer this, he's going to prove to Arjun that these can be done in integration. They can be, you can renounce the work, but you can also work in devotion. And there are two paths, right? One is, one person may say that I'm going to renounce the work and one person may say that I'm going to work with detachment. So how are these two both sannyas, but one is sannyas of work, the other one is sannyas in work. No, OF, just OF.
Okay.
So sannyas of work means you stop doing work.
Why is it off for you?
Like you give up work. Sannyas from, you can say maybe from work, right?
Yeah.
Sannyas from work, and then sannyas in work means you are working, but with detachment. So these are the two things that Arjuna is confused in, and then these are the two things that Krishna is going to talk about and say how both of them can lead to the same path, but sannyas in work is easier. So um, sometimes we hear that all paths lead to the same goal. Like you can follow anything, everything will lead to, like all roads lead to Rome. Do all roads really lead to Rome? No, right?
No, Mataji.
So all paths do not lead to the supreme. That is not true. But here, when Krishna is going to say that these two paths both lead to liberation, it's referring to these two specific paths, not that all paths will lead to liberation. So here in this next verse, Krishna says renunciation of work, which means sannyas of or from work, right? And work in devotion, which is sannyas in work, are both good for liberation. But of the two, work in devotional service is better than renunciation of work. You get the two processes and how? Now, we haven't gone deep yet. Any thoughts on why? Why Krishna is saying that work in devotional service is better than renunciation of work?
So renunciation needs a certain pre-qualification or pre-purification. Otherwise, there is a risk of falling back again, more more backwards. If you are not truly eligible for renunciation, we have a danger of falling back. But with the other
Okay.
path, I think it's progressive, where we are making sure steps towards Krishna.
Okay, kind of, yes. So Prabhu is saying that there's higher chance of fall down when we are following renunciation of work, because we may not be there yet and the danger is high, whereas work in devotional service is more progressive. So there's always, it may be small steps forward, but it's more forward going. Is that right, Prabhu?
Yes, Mataji, that's all.
Okay. Any other thoughts?
Mataji, one another point when last time when we were discussing, so when we say renunciation of work, it's a renunciation of result of the work. So that
Renunciation
is
of
result
result
of the
of
work.
work is work in devotional service.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So
So
let me give you a small anecdotal story that I recently heard. So there is a king, right? And very opulent. He lives in a huge palace with thousands of servants and many people to take care of his needs. Huge kingdom. And in that kingdom, there is a sannyasi who lives under a tree. Probably the only possessions he has is a stick and a kamandalu, right? The water pot. And he has no place. He's fully renounced, right? Doesn't do any work, only begs alms, and whatever he gets, he takes that. Otherwise, he fasts. So two contrasting people, one very opulent, one very renounced. Once a fire breaks out in the kingdom, and there's no say, like no respite that it can be turned off, or extinguished. So everybody has to escape, like everybody has to be evacuated. So the king, obviously being the person in position, is trying to see who needs to escape first, how do we do that, and all those other things. So obviously, all the women, children, older people, he makes sure that everybody is taken care of. And then now it's turn for this sannyasi, and obviously he's not panicking, and he's not that I should be the one who leaves the Titanic first. Nothing like that. He's making sure that everybody is safe, and not worried about his own safety. And then obviously the turn of this sannyasi comes, and he's relieved that he's having now being taken to be rescued. And when the soldiers are coming to rescue him, he says, oh, by the way, can you get my stick and kamandal, right? So who is renounced and who is attached? The sannyasi, he has
He's still
nothing.
attached.
But he's attached to that one stick and that one kamandlu that he has. Whereas the king, who is living a fully opulent life, he is not attached to anything. It's not that, oh, what will happen to my kingdom, and maybe I should be the first one to get out. Nothing. So sometimes we may see people who are in the garb of a sannyasi, but we don't know who they really are until we squeeze them. Right? When the life squeezes us, that's when the real juice comes out, like what's in there. So yeah, so like work in devotional service is better than renunciation of work, because was that sannyasi really ready to renounce the work? Probably not, right? So we, in scriptures, this kind of renunciation is called Falgu Vairagya. Falgu means show bottle, unnecessary, like it's just for outside world. Internally, they are still attached to the little small thing that they may have. Okay. Yes, Sridhar,
No, it's
say anything?
interesting. So
Yes. Yeah, so this third verse was talking about he who neither hates nor desires the fruits of his activities is known to be always renounced. Such a person, free from all dualities, easily overcomes material bondage and is completely liberated, O mighty armed Arjun. So in the previous verse, Krishna says that both these processes lead to liberation. But liberation is not possible until we are in bondage, in material bondage. Material bondage arises from attachment. So now there are two ways to not have attachment. One is to just give up everything, and the other is to not give up everything but work for a different purpose, right? So are we clear, like what's the goal and what we are trying to get rid of and what's the process? So when we are ill, right, if we fall sick, then there are two things that need to be done. First, the spread of the infection needs to be stopped, and then we regain strength. We cannot say, I don't care about the infection, I just need to get my strength back. It's a two-step process. Like that's why we first take medication and then we recover. So similarly, in order to be liberated, in order to gain our strength back and be disease free, we first need to slash the bondage that we have, right? So, and then those two are the ways to do it. Although one, in Krishna's opinion, is easier, one is harder. And then we can talk about why the other one is harder, because externally it may be very easy or seemingly easy, even though probably not, to seize action, right? Because I feel externally also it's very hard. When somebody commits a very, very, very grave crime, what is the punishment? Generally.
death sentence.
But before the death sentence.
Sentence for
Imprisonment.
life.
Sorry, say that again, bro.
Maybe jail.
Yeah, but what kind of jail?
Imprisonment.
Yeah, what kind of imprisonment? There are different levels, right?
Mhm.
Depending on the crime, sometimes you may
Lifetime.
get what, Roji?
Lifetime.
Lifetime.
Yeah.
Have we heard about solitary
Solitary
confinement?
yeah,
What is solitary confinement?
living organisms
In a
in a small cell.
cell
Mhm.
with nothing to do.
I think, yeah.
Is it easy?
It's very, very difficult as well.
No contact with the external world, nothing. So when the crime is grave, the punishment is no action. Right? Cease from all action. So do we think that giving up all action is easy? We are forcing solitary confinement on ourselves. How long can we make it happen? So when it's forced, it's not easy. When it's voluntarily enforced, do we think we can be in it for a long time? Yeah, very, very hard to follow. Why? Because the nature of the soul is to be active. Now you are putting the soul in a condition where you were saying no activity, no activity, no activity. And soul will not be happy with no activity. In fact, that's why it said that Brahman liberation, when you merge with the existence of Brahman, with the light Brahman, it's not easy for the soul because there's nothing to do there. You are a spark. Now imagine somebody tells you, go be a spark in the sky. What are you doing there? Nothing. You see Narad Muni passing by with his veena. Even he's doing something, but you are just watching. But why do people like it? Because they are fed up with the material life. So they don't want any relations. They don't want to deal with material life. They don't want to cook. They don't want to dog. They don't want anything. You're fed up. So when they're fed up, they say, okay, nothing is good. But really, is nothing good? Can you survive in nothingness?
But Mataji, soul doesn't have memory, soul doesn't have anything material world related. Then how you are correlated with like a soul is just like a
Jiva, right? Jivatma.
yeah,
Jivatma, the nature of the soul is to be active because why? It is such in Ananda.
but soul is when it is in a like a materialistic body, then it is active. Otherwise, it is not like it is just it doesn't have its own memory because when soul is transferred from one like a body to another body, so like it won't carry the memory from the past. So
Yeah, but your subtle body, right? We have our gross body. When we die, the gross body is gone, right? Nothing to do with this material body. But then when we are transferred from one body to other, it's not just the soul. There's a subtle body which carries with the soul. And subtle body consists of mind, intelligence, and false ego. That's why do we have these impressions? Like we see people who are afraid of heights. If there's no past impression, how is this person afraid of heights this life? It should be a fresh start every time, right? Clean slate, everything fresh. But no, we don't see that. There are past impressions that carry with us when we go from this body to the other. That's why we see different people have different fears, different shortcomings, different illnesses also. Like some people are born with a birth defect. Why? It should be a clean slate. Why is somebody poor? Why is somebody rich? Nobody chooses by choice to be born in Africa where even water is not accessible. Why? So soul is Sachidanand, but Jiva or the soul, when it transmigrates from one body to the other, there's also this concept of mind, mind, intelligence, and false ego, which goes with it. And that carries the impression from this life to the next life.
so it is somewhere it is in a Bhagavad Gita or like Bhagavatam.
Yeah, both. Both. Like even in Bhagavad Gita, there are so many verses which say I can show you after the class today, where it says that the actions we are doing in this body, this life, are making our next body, next life body.
Because of the karma of this this body.
Yeah, but then how does karma transmigrate from this body to the next? Through the impressions that we have in our mind, through our false ego, through our identification. What was I saying? Sorry, forgot. Yeah, I was saying like solid, like inactivity, right? Like inaction is very hard for us because our nature is to be active. So if we are forced to become inactive, even though externally, so I have seen these places where people take Maun Vrat, right? So they don't say anything, food is just given to them, and right, they're not doing anything. But then is the mind quiet? Like they're writing all the time. They communicate by writing, right? Is the mind quiet? No, the chatter of the mind is going on all the time. So even though externally we may cease the activity, even though I feel that is itself is very hard, let's say somebody is able to do that, but the mind is still going on. So how do we, without controlling the mind, this renunciation of work is very hard. Because I've seen some of my friends go to this place where it's like you're not supposed to talk to anybody for 5 days, but then you can write and talk anything. I'm like, what is the meaning of that? Right? So yeah. Anything from our online audience? Okay, so let's continue. So we are in text 4, and that says that only the ignorant speak of devotional service as being different from the analytical study of material world. Those who are actually learned say that he who applies himself well to one of these paths achieves the results of both. Right? So the result of both is liberation. Again, we don't have to differentiate between them. The only thing Krishna is suggesting here is that one is easier, one is harder. One who knows that this position reached by the means of analytical study can also be attained by devotional service, and who therefore sees analytical study and devotional service to be on the same level, sees things as they are. Right? So they are both at the same level, both lead to liberation, both lead to freedom from material bondage, but the question is, which one do we choose? Okay, so let's now continue further. So text 6 is what we are going to start now. So it goes as this: Sanyasastu mahabaho dukkham aptum mayogata yoga yokto munir brahma nachirangati atigacchati. Merely renouncing all activities, yet not
Mataji.
engaging in... Yes, Prabhuji?
Deepak Prabhuji, let us read also the sloka.
Oh, repeat? Okay,
Yes.
sure.
Yeah,
Let's do that.
follow.
Okay, let's try again.
Sanyasastu
Sanyasastu
mahabaho dukkhamapto mayogataha
dukkham aptum mayogataha yoga yukto munir brahma
yoga yukto mune brahma
nachirena adigacchati.
nachirena.
Merely renouncing all activities, yet not engaging in devotional service of the Lord cannot make one happy. But a thoughtful person engaged in devotional service can achieve the supreme without delay. So let's read the purport. Did we used to read the whole purport or just parts of it? Parts of it?
Related.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I
First
think
one.
this is important. Let's read some. Can somebody online or here read?
There are two classes of sannyasis or persons in the renounced order of life. The Mahavadi sannyasis are engaged in the study of
Mayavadi sannyas.
The Mayavadi sannyasis are engaged in the study of Sankhya philosophy, whereas the Vaishnava sannyasis are engaged in the study of Bhagavatam philosophy, which affords the proper commentary on the Vedanta Sutras. The Mayavadi sannyasis also study the Vedanta Sutras, but use their own commentary called Sariraka Bhashya, written by Shankaracharya. The students of the Bhagavata school are engaged in the devotional service of the Lord according to Pancharatriki regulations. And therefore, the Vaishnava sannyasis have multiple engagements in the transcendental service of the Lord. The Vaishnava sannyasis have nothing to do with material activities, and yet they perform various activities in their devotional service to the Lord. But the Mayavadi sannyasis, yeah.
That's enough, yeah. So here now we are talking about two kinds of sannyasis, right? The Mayavadi sannyasis and then the Vaishnav sannyasis. So the Mayavadi sannyasis here, as Prabhupada is saying, that they are engaged in, again, the analytical study of the material world, and they follow a commentary by Shankaracharya called Shariraka Bhashya. And what this commentary is about is again renouncing. Both of them are trying to find the supreme, right? One is through the process of negation, and the other is through the process of knowledge and then working with knowledge, the Vaishnavas, right? So that's what, and again here the most important thing is dry speculations and impersonal interpretations by artificial means are all useless for Mayavadi sannyasis. The Vaishnav sannyasis who are engaged in devotional service are happy in the discharge of their transcendental duties, right? So basically, this process where we are renouncing things is generally not very pleasing, because if we are attached to something and you are told, like right now Kartik month is going on, so a lot of people will renounce sweets or do some austerity, but many times we are waiting for the month to be over so that we can eat the sweet, right? So when we are forced, or when we force ourselves to renounce things, it's not easy, it's not pleasing, it's not a happy experience. But then when we use it in Krishna's service, right, then it becomes pleasing. I know one Mataji in the temple who loves shopping. I mean, she loves shopping. Let's not go further. Recently, I saw that she is now starting to do the same, but she buys a lot of jewelry for Krishna, lots of other things which are needed in the temple. So she's now kind of learning how to dovetail that propensity through some service. So the pleasure is still there, right? Because sometimes these vasanas that we have, it's not just for us many times, it's just there, right? Like somebody likes to really cook delicious food items and invite a lot of people at home, friends. So they can continue to do that. Now all they have to do is offer that to the Lord. That's it. So the pleasure is not taken away in this process where we are working in devotion, or taking sannyas in work, not sannyas from work. Any questions on this one?
Mataji, one clarification, what Krishna is saying, or what the translation or further by Vedanta Swamiji also telling is what Shankaracharya written is also a valid path, as we read in the previous paths, but it's very hard to really follow it. Is that being further explained here, right?
Yes,
it's not
exactly.
that path does not exist, but it's quite hard to get it right or travel through it.
Yes, exactly. Both these paths lead to the same destination. One is easier, one is very hard. So, and I think you were only saying that fall down in one of them is very easy because you get frustrated, you give up. Whereas in the other, we say that devotional service is joyfully performed. Susukham kartum avyayam, right? Devotional service is joyfully performed because there's no, so we say add Krishna, no need to subtract anything. So when Krishna gets added in many things that we are already doing, it becomes joyful. If you start saying, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, then eventually people get frustrated. Like, how much am I going to subtract?
Also, Mataji, on top of that, Mayavadi word is coming because of the interpretation of the path, is it? Or
Yes, Mayavadis here doesn't mean the other kind of Mayavadi that Prabhupada generally refers to. This is the one, this is the sect of Mayavadi that follow Shankaracharya, right? And who study the Sharira Bhashya.
okay. Thank you, Mataji.
Okay, let's move to text 7. Yoga yukto vishuddhatma
योगयुक्तो विशुद्धात्मा
vijitatma jitendriya
विजितात्मा जितेन्द्रियः
sarvabhuta bhutatma
सर्वभूतात्मा भूतात्मा
kurvan api na lipyate.
कुर्वन्नपि न लिप्यते.
So starting from this verse, we are starting a new section, and Krishna is now going to define the characteristics of a person who is yoga yukta. Who is a yoga yukta? If we look at the word by word translation, yoga yukta means a person who is engaged in devotional service. So now that he has established that this path is easier, Krishna is now going to dive deeper into the characteristics, how this path is performed, and things like that. So from here to I think verse 12 or something like that, we will see the characteristics of a person who is engaged in devotional service. You will see that there's an interesting word here in this verse, bhutatma, bhutatma. Generally, Sanskrit is a language where repetition is not needed. Like a word is there, it communicates its meaning, we move on. But when there is a repetition, generally it means we should stop and figure out what happened there. So here, if you look at the word by word translation, Atma Bhuta Atma, right? Sarva Bhuta. So the sandhi or the break happens at this. So Sarva Bhuta and then Atma Bhuta Atma. These are like two sandhis. So Sarva Bhuta means to all living entities, and Atma Bhuta Atma means compassionate. So since we are discussing the characteristics of a person who is in devotional service, we will see in the purport later that one of the characteristics is that such a person is compassionate to all living beings. Okay, let's read the translation. Somebody online or here would like to read?
Yeah. One who works in devotion, who is pure soul and who controls his mind and sense is dear to everyone, and everyone is dear to him. Though always working, such a man is never entangled.
Entangled. Yes. So what are the characteristics discussed here? One who works in devotion and who controls his mind is very dear to everyone, and everyone is dear to him. Now, I am dear to everyone. This sounds very nice. Oh, everybody loves me, right? I am dear to everyone. The problem is when everyone needs to be dear to me. I don't like this person's dog, he barks too much, or I don't like my neighbor, I don't like this, I don't like my boss, I don't like my colleague. So the first part is very easy. I'm dear to everyone. Or everyone should love me, should, because you need to be a yoga yukta, so you need to love me. But when it comes to me, then it's very hard. So how do we make that happen? So Krishna in our scriptures it said that one who loves, so who is dear to Krishna, right? We want to love Krishna, right? So, but then along with that comes a whole big paraphernalia. So if we want to love Krishna, then we have to love Krishna, right? We have to love who love Krishna. So other people who love Krishna, we have to love them, right? Then we have to love whom Krishna loves. Is there anybody that Krishna doesn't love? So this is the true meaning of loving Krishna. Love Krishna, love those who love Krishna, and love whom Krishna loves. And that includes everybody. So Krishna consciousness is not sectarian. It's not that this sect or this set of devotees or this group is nice, the other one not that nice, right? So we have to be inclusive. This is the beauty of Krishna consciousness, that for us to be able to truly be Krishna conscious, we have to include everybody under our umbrella. Okay, sorry for that. Let's read the purport. Let's read a little bit from the beginning, and then we will read a little bit in the end. Anybody, any volunteers?
I can read again.
Sure, Prabhuji.
One who is on the path of liberation by Krishna consciousness is very dear to every living being, and every living being is dear to him. This is due to his Krishna consciousness. Such a person cannot think of any living being as separate from Krishna, just as the leaves and branches of tree are not separate from the tree. He knows very well that by pouring water on the root of the tree, the water will be distributed to all the leaves and branches, or by supplying food to the stomach, the energy is automatically distributed throughout the body. Should I stop?
Yeah.
Okay.
So again, these analogies are coming from Bhagavatam. So generally, like the whole body has to cooperate with the tongue and the hand to feel nourished. If let's say my leg starts saying that, oh, the tongue is so fortunate, only it gets to enjoy the nice food, and the hand is the one that puts the food in the mouth. So the legs say that we are going to revolt and we are not going to let the hand put the food in the mouth, right? Now, do we think if the hand is not able to put the food in the mouth, the legs will feel nourished? Like, can we put food directly into the leg? No. So the whole body gets nourished only when this process is allowed. Similarly, we cannot say that I will water only the leaves, right? You can pour water on every leaf. First of all, that will be very hard. And then it's not going to do any good, because eventually the water falls down, and then the water which gets absorbed in the roots is what nourishes the whole tree. So similarly, this is the analogy which is being used here to explain that in order to be on this path of liberation, we need to include everybody in Krishna consciousness, and we need to think of everyone as being dear to us. Can somebody read this highlighted portion?
And because everyone is satisfied by his work, he is pure in consciousness. Because he is pure in consciousness, his mind is completely controlled. And because his mind is controlled, his senses are also controlled. Because his mind is always fixed on Krishna, there is no chance of his being deviated from Krishna, nor is there a chance that he will engage his senses in matters other than the service of the Lord.
Right. So we hear a lot about mind should be in control. What does that mean? What do we understand by mind should be in control?
Think of Krishna again.
It should not let the sensors go as it just desires. It should
Yes.
be in a controlled way. As permitted by Shastras, and at the same time, Krishna centric.
Yes. Yes. So mind is like a storehouse. It's like a hard disk. It stores all the impressions. Like when we see a gulab jamun, right? Let's say we have tasted a gulab jamun before, and we know it's very tasty. So when the mind sees the gulab jamun, it knows that it's very tasty. But if I have diabetes, my intelligence has to tell me to not eat it. But many a times our intelligence is weak. So we give in. We give in, right? We don't let intelligence be the driver, and the mind just makes random decisions, which should have been made by the intelligence. And that's why we suffer, right? Then that's when the senses are not in our control. So what we need to do is for us to be controlled, when our mind is in control, then the senses are in control. And why is that needed? Because if we need to act in devotional service, then we cannot be like everywhere, right? We need to know what kind of action we need to do, how this action needs to be done so that it's in relation to Krishna consciousness and things like that. So this part is talking about because he is in pure consciousness, his mind is completely controlled, and because his mind is controlled, his senses are also controlled, because we are letting the intelligence be the driving force here. Okay, so now this is practical application, so maybe we should read this. Can we have somebody else read? Hima Mataji, can you please read?
My glasses are somewhere.
Should I make it bigger?
I think next time I will read.
Okay.
I can read it.
Okay, Santosh Prabhuji, please read.
The highlighted text, is it?
Yes, Prabhuji.
So spiritually, no one was killed on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Only their dresses were changed by the order of Krishna, who was personally present. Therefore, Arjuna, while fighting on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, was not really fighting at all. He was simply carrying out the orders of Krishna in full Krishna consciousness. Such a person is never entangled in the reactions.
Thank you, Prabhu. So what does it mean to be entangled by the reactions of work?
Carrying karma.
Yes, carrying karma, right? So when we are acting in the order of Krishna consciousness or for Krishna, then there is no entanglement. If a soldier kills 500 people as part of a war, is there any reaction to that killing? No. But if I go about killing 500 people, is there reaction?
Oh, yeah.
Right? So this is the same thing. Arjuna ended up killing that many people on the battle of Kurukshetra, but then it was not because of his own will. He was instructed to do so by the higher authority. So similarly, if all our actions are like this, whether we are, so when we step on the outside on the floor, there are so many ants that sometimes we squish. Do we not get the reaction for that? For killing them by walking? Or when even outside, when we have weeds and we pull them out in our garden, do we not get reaction for that? For pulling out a weed?
Unknowingly.
We will get reaction, Mataji, but not pulling them out. Also, we will get reaction. We have to choose the higher dharma among two.
By not pulling them out, we will get reaction, Prabhu?
Because we have to keep things in order. Whatever is in currently given to us. So yeah, not maintaining them is not right.
But the weed also belongs to Krishna. Just like we just discussed, weed has a soul. It belongs to Krishna. You just pulled it out.
But it may not be the appropriate place for the weed to be within, say, other plants.
So is it the fault of the weed to be not in the, sorry, I'm just playing devil's advocate to get us to, I'm not questioning you. So whose fault it is that the weed is there? It's not weed's fault, right? And then Prabhu, to answer your question, right, it happened unknowingly. So let's say you just moved into US, right? And you just started driving and you were driving 50 on a 20 zone. The cop pulls you. Can you say, I just didn't know? Will he not give you the ticket? Oh, it happened unknowingly.
So it's definitely it is knowingly, because I know that it is 20 limit zone and I'm driving 50. So
No, but you didn't know. Let's say you are new, right? You really didn't know.
yeah, so in that case it is unknowing.
So will he agree? Will he say, oh yeah, it was in? He will not agree, right? So the law of karma is very strong. It grinds. It grinds impartially. So we have heard this term, ignorance is bliss. Ignorance is never bliss. Ignorance cannot be bliss in terms of laws of karma. I didn't know. Well, okay, but now you know, right? That's what the cop will say. Sorry, too bad you didn't know. Well, now you know, here's the ticket. So we cannot say that I didn't know, and so hence excuse me from that. No, the laws of karma are equal and impartial for everyone. So Punya's Prabhu point that the weed, when we do pull out the weed, we do get a reaction. When we do step over the ants outside, we do get a reaction. When we breathe, thousands of bacteria in my gut are getting killed, or probably, or when we take antibiotics, it just kills everything inside the body. Do we not get reaction? We do. But then if we start dovetailing those activities for Krishna, then now we are acting under somebody else's order. So if I took out that weed in my lawn to put a plant where it will grow flowers, which I will later offer to Krishna, the reaction is less, or maybe not. I don't know. If I stepped outside and stepped on a I don't know, the pile of ants, and I was happening to be going to the temple, the reaction is probably less. So every action, every step that we take, if it's in relation to the divinity, to Krishna, then so it's not, the laws of karma grind strong, but they are not blind. They know what's going on inside. So even though externally, again, like that sannyasi, we may seem in a dhoti, in a kurta, in a sari with a tilak, long tilak, but and externally somebody may think, oh, I'm such a pure devotee, and this person is like gives such nice classes, they know so much, but who knows what's going on inside? That only Paramatma knows and Krishna knows. And based on what's going on inside, depending on what you do externally, the reaction comes. So we cannot escape reaction, it's coming. But how are we, what is the motivation behind the action leads to the reaction. Okay, let's move on. So here my notes are telling me that in this previous verse, we had this word called Jitendriya. Jitendriya means one who has conquered the senses, right? Jitendriya, right? One who has conquered the Indriya. So my notes and Bhagavad Gita are telling me that these verses, text 8 and 9, are describing the person who has conquered their senses. So let's see. नैव किञ्चित् करोमीति
नैव किञ्चित् करोमीति
युक्तमन्येत तत्त्ववित्
युक्तो मन्येत तत्त्ववित्
पश्यन् शृण्वन् स्पशन् जिङ्घ्रन्
पश्यन् शृण्वन् स्पृशन् चिह्नन्
अस्नन् गच्छन् स्वपन् स्वसन्
अश्नन् गच्छन् स्वपन् श्वसन्
प्रलपन् विसृजन् गृह्णन्
प्रलपन् विसृजन् गृह्णन्
उन्मिषन् निमिषन् अपि
उन्मिषन् निमिषन् अपि
इन्द्रियाणि इन्द्रियार्थेषु
इन्द्रियाणि इन्द्रियार्थेषु
वर्तन्त इति धारयन्.
वर्तन्ते इति धारयन्.
Translation.
There are three tongue twisters.
Yeah. Pragya Mataji, are you there? Can you read?
Yes.
The translation.
A person in the divine consciousness, although engaged in seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, eating, moving about, sleeping, breathing, always knows within himself that he actually does nothing at all. Because while speaking, evacuating, receiving, or opening or closing his eyes, He always knows that only the material senses are engaged with their objects and that he is aloof from them.
Yeah, okay, now I see. So yeah, basically a person who has controlled his senses, he knows that even though he may be externally engaged in all these different activities, he is not actually the only doer. It's not that when he says that he actually does nothing at all, doesn't mean that he doesn't do anything physically, but he knows that he is not the only doer. Um, let's see. Hare Krishna, bro. Hare Krishna, bro. Please come. Come. ठीक है प्रभु. हाँ रख दीजिए. Right, so a person who is Jitendriya, he knows that although he is actually doing all these activities externally, seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, so it's not that he is not doing anything, but this verse is telling is that he knows that he is not the only doer. In the next verses, we are going to see that there are actually three different kinds of doers. Because now let's take the example of a person who is paralyzed, right? So let's say my left arm is paralyzed. Now you desire to lift your left arm, right? And you can do it. I also desire to lift my left arm, but I cannot do it. What is the difference? Is my power of desire any less than yours? Probably it's even more. So what causes that this arm, which seems completely fine, right? Like physically there's no ailment or anything, that my desire doesn't get fulfilled and somebody else's desire gets fulfilled. Because the answer is because I am not the only doer. If I was the only doer, then anything I willed should get fulfilled. But it doesn't. Which means that there are some external factors which also are there, which enable a desire to get fulfilled. And a person who has control of their senses understands that they are not the only doer. What is that verse? Kartaham iti manyate. Ahankara Vimudatma. Yeah, prakriti kriyamanani gunay karma sarvasha ahankara vimudatma kartaham iti manyate. The spirit soul, bewildered by the influence of false ego, thinks himself the doer of activities that are actually carried out by the three modes of material nature. So it's not that we are not the doer, but we are not the only doer, right? And later in these verses we will cover.
The only doer, or we are not the doer at all?
No, we are not the only doer. We are the doer, right? Because the initial desire has to come from us. If we don't become the doer, then it becomes sannyas from work. Because then you're not even thinking of doing anything. Yeah, okay. Oh, it already covers here. Okay. Can we read here?
I can read, Mataji.
1 second, Prabhu. Read. Yeah, go ahead. Right. Thank you, Beta. So here, Krishna is talking about, or Prabhupada rather is talking about, there are actually 5 doers, right? Or the causes of any work. The doer, which is ourselves. So obviously that is important, but we need to understand it's not just us. The kind of work, the situation, the endeavor, right? Sometimes our endeavor may be lacking, and that's why we don't get the result that is needed. But then, even if the work is perfect, the situation is perfect, the endeavor was perfect, then also sometimes the result is not there. And why is that? 99% perspiration, 1% inspiration. That's the 1%. So sometimes the 99% is there, but still we may not get the result. Sometimes when we do this DYS course, we talk about why do good things happen to bad people and vice versa. Many a times we run into these situations where somebody who is not that great or not that deserving gets something, the fruits, and somebody who is not very well deserving doesn't get it. So if our endeavor and our effort was all and all, then we would not be seeing these things around us. Yeah, so in material consciousness, the senses are engaged in sense gratification, but in Krishna consciousness, the senses are engaged in the satisfaction of Krishna's senses. Now, does it seem like Krishna needs us to satisfy his senses? Is he like unsatisfied with himself and needs us to help him satisfy?
No.
Then why do we always keep hearing that we need to engage our senses to satisfy Krishna? We need to work for Krishna. Why do we keep hearing this?
It purifies us in the process, Mataji.
What does that mean? Purify ourselves.
So we are a false identification of ourselves as we keep connecting with Krishna. In the process, we may identify our true self.
We may. So there's a question mark there.
Or we will. Yeah, it may start as we may, but we will in the process.
Yes, yes. Yeah. So what you have said is correct, but sometimes it's hard for us to understand these philosophical terms, right? What does purification mean? What does it mean that we will purify ourselves and develop that relationship with Krishna? But very simple thing I heard from one of the recent lectures that I was hearing. They give this example. So let's say like most of us are parents here, right? And we have little kids. Now, let's say it's Prabhu's birthday is coming up, and so daughter requests Mataji that I want to give something to dad, and they both plan something and give something to dad, right? Either they make something or they buy something, whatever. Now, do you think that gift is going to make dad happy? It will, yes. Right? Do you think that the money is, who does the money belong to? Dad's money,
Father,
right?
Yeah.
Father's money. The daughter bought something, gave it to the dad. So does the dad need that thing? No. Can he not buy it himself? He can. But when the daughter gives, isn't the joy much bigger? The same thing is with Krishna. When we give something out of love, everything belongs to him. He can desire and get anything and everything. But when we as his children give it with love, it makes him feel happy. Same thing. Right? When we take the water in our hands from in the Ganges and pour it back into the Ganges, what are we doing? Nothing. Right? Because we don't have anything to give to Ganges. So all we do is we take some water from the Ganges itself and we say we are offering you your own water back. But just that act purifies us. So actually, when we say work in devotion, right, many a times we are thinking about that we need to renounce this thing or that thing. Nothing belongs to us for us to be able to renounce. Even this body doesn't belong to us, right? I mean, today we are sitting here, next moment we don't know if we are going to be here anymore or not. So if this body doesn't belong to us, then let alone any other thing. So what are we thinking of renouncing? Nothing belongs to us. What value is there when I say, Prabhu, I renounce your car? It doesn't belong to me. So what am I renouncing? The renunciation that we are talking about here is the illusion that we can renounce something. We are in illusion that we can renounce something. We are giving up that illusion. We cannot renounce anything. Nothing belongs to us in the first place. Vishidhar is giggling.
Like that takes time.
Okay, let's move on. Text 10. Yeah, so we are still in this section where we are discussing Jitendriya. Brahmani adhaya karmani
ब्रह्मण्यादाय कर्माणि
sangam tyaktva karoti ya
सङ्गं त्वक्ता करोति या
lipyate na sa papena
लिप्यतेन स पापेन
padma patram ivambhasa.
पद्मपत्रमिवाम्बसा.
One who performs his duty without attachment surrenders the results unto the Supreme Lord. Surrendering the results unto the Supreme Lord is unaffected by sinful action, as the lotus leaf is untouched by water. Right? So when we are performing our duty without attachment, right, it's very hard for us to not be attached, but we can see Arjun as an example. He had to kill his favorite grandfather, his favorite teacher. But once he understood the reason behind it, he did it, right? So duty without attachment, surrendering the results to Krishna or the Lord, right? That's what he did, is unaffected by sinful action. So initially, if you remember in chapter 1, Arjun was giving all these reasons for not fighting the battle. He was saying, I will get sinful reactions for killing all these relatives. But then when he really understood the reason behind the war, it was not because Krishna wanted him to get the kingdom. That was a very small reason. Krishna was here to establish dharma. And this war was needed to be able to establish dharma. So if that is the end goal, then whatever amount of killing or other things happened on the battle, Arjuna is not affected by them because now he's acting under the order of the Lord. As a lotus leaf is untouched by water, right? A lotus grows in the muddiest of the water, right? The water beneath is stagnant, dirty, but do we ever see the lotus get impacted by that? Mataji is making something like right now where she's making a drawing or an art which says live like a lotus. It's a very big thing to live like a lotus. We are living in the material world, but we need not be of the material world. And we can do that by thinking about the actions we are doing. Is this for myself? Is this for the Lord? And again, thinking that Lord doesn't need anything from us, but our small endeavors pleases him.
So it's only Arjuna who hears Krishna speak of this, right? So why is that? But other people who are fighting, they don't know, they haven't heard the Bhagavad Gita, but they have got their own reasons why they are fighting. So why are all of those people who are fighting Kurukshetra got liberated?
Yeah, so because Krishna consciousness means that your consciousness is absorbed in Krishna. It can be favorable it can also be unfavorable. That's the mercy of Krishna. Right? So we know the story of Shishupal. Right? You know, like he got this benediction or boon or curse, whatever we call it, that he can blaspheme Krishna up to 100 times, but after 100 times, Krishna will kill him. And he used to be always careful to go up till 99, except this one time when when Yudhishthir performed the Rajasuya Yagya, right? He was blaspheming Krishna and he crossed the 100 and Krishna took out the Sudarshan Chakra and killed him. And he got liberation. He got liberation. He merged into the body of Krishna. The reason was because his consciousness was so absorbed in Krishna. He was thinking about Krishna all the time. How do I kill this person or how do I blaspheme Krishna? It's all about consciousness. Even Kansa, he got liberated when he got killed. Because his consciousness was in animosity absorbed in Krishna. Or not in animosity, in fear. All the people on the battlefield were also liberated because, again, what does Bhagavad Gita verse 8 say? Sorry, chapter 8 say? We haven't reached there, but read text 5. And whoever at the end of his life quits his body remembering me alone at once attains my nature. Of this there is no doubt.
Mataji, one quick clarification. I don't think everyone who fought Kurukshetra got liberated. They got better state, but I don't think all of them remembered Krishna when they were getting killed.
Prabhu is saying they got better state. What does better state mean, Prabhu?
Basically, they got Swarga. Many of them got like Veera Swargam, they say, right? Like when you die in the battle and all, but not liberated, I believe.
There are different kinds of liberation, and I will not speculate here. I heard that there are different kinds of mukti, right? There is Sayujya, Sarupya, Salokya, Shrishti. There are different 5 kinds of liberation, many different kinds of liberation. In one, you get the same form as the Lord. In one, you live in the same planet as the Lord. One is merging into the Brahman, right? So all these different kinds of liberations are there. You may be right, Prabhu, that not everybody got full liberation, but my understanding is they got some kind of liberation. Either they went to the Brahman location. When we are talking about liberation in Bhagavad Gita, we are talking about liberation from the cycle of birth and death.
Yeah, I don't think all of them got, but you are right, Mataji. Many of them got Swarga. I think I was Mahabharatam discourse, but not that everyone got any of those mokshas as well.
Yeah, you may be right. You may be right. I don't know all the intricacies of who got what, but I know like Kans got liberation, Shishupal got liberation.
True,
all of those.
They are fully absorbed in Krishna. Yeah.
Yeah, but and the
out
reason
of fear,
was
Kamsa was absorbed. Yeah. I agree, Mataji.
Yeah. And the reason was because at the end of their life, they were fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness, even though unfavorably.
Yes.
Right?
Bhagavatam also tells the same. Yeah.
Like the Krishna offered for us his Akshoni Sena.
Yes.
So they all get liberated because they belong to Krishna.
Yes. All his Akshoni Sena got liberated. Yes, because they were anyway Krishnas. Yeah. So yes, Prabhu. So you're right. So what were we discussing? Sorry, forgot.
I think liberation part for everyone who did others also got liberation as a side effect beyond Arjuna.
Yeah, exactly. So our goal is obviously to think about Krishna at the end of our life favorably, hopefully. And the way to do that is to prepare through this life, right? So we say life is the preparation, death is the examination. Many are right, like death is our examination, but we are preparing for it throughout our life. Because if let's say you are a very not serious student and have been watching movies throughout your whole student life, when it's time for your examination, you'll remember those movies, nothing related to the coursework. So if we don't spend our life in preparation, then the Yamadutas are coming to catch us. So
it's a bit unfair where people do work, but the person when he dies, he just thinks of Krishna and then he just merges with Krishna. So, like, he might be doing all bad stuff the entire lifetime, and then during death, if he thinks about Krishna,
yeah.
how is that? I mean, that's not fair, right?
Yeah, but again, we have to see that there are different kinds of liberation, right?
Mataji, can I add something?
Yes, Punya Prabhu,
I
please go
don't
ahead.
think remembering Krishna is that easy, Mataji, when death comes.
No,
It's
Prabhu is talking about like Shishupal. He's talking about Kansa, like they are.
No, not necessarily then. In fact, one of the things that you said during the death or at the time of the death, if they think about me, then they get merged into me or they are liberated or whatever.
They attain
right?
my nature.
Right. So they could be doing all bad stuff.
Yeah, we have an example, but in Bhagavatam there is a story of a Brahman called Ajamil. So
Okay.
in Bhagavatam, so this Ajamil, he was a very pious person most of his life, and then he got attached to some prostitute, and he gave up everything. And then he was engaged in all kinds of illicit activities and all those things. Thankfully, he named his youngest son Narayan, and he was very attached to that son. And at the moment of his death, he was just like that, calling Narayan, Narayan, like how you, whoever is very dear to you, you call out their name, right? So this whole description is given in Bhagavatam, where from one angle, one place, Yamadutas are coming because he is very sinful. Right? They know he has been attached to a prostitute, he has been doing all these nonsense things. So they are like very confident. And then from one side, Vishnu Dutas come. And they are like, no, this is so now they are having a duel. This is mine, right? And then Vishnu Dutas say that based on the verse I showed you, he chanted the name of Narayan. You cannot take him. He's ours. And Yamadutas are saying, look at his life balance, right? It's full of sinful activities. So this Ajamil, he gets taken by Vishnu Dutas, but it's not that he gets liberation immediately. He takes birth again. And then he performs austerities.
One small correction. I think neither of them take him. He gets to know this nature. He comes back to life and he renounces everything and does the tapasya of Lord for the rest of his life. Towards the end of the life, he gets liberation.
My understanding is that he takes another birth, but small detail does not matter.
Either way, I think it is same thing. He does not get immediate liberation. He gets that knowledge that he made some mistake and he does further tapasya. But all of it is possible because he was remembering his son out of love for son only, but coincidentally it is name of Lord also.
Yeah, so that's why many a times we keep our kids' names in originally olden days, now the day of modern names, in the name of God. Yeah, but we also have to know, so one thing in this life of this person, Ajamil, was there is a difference. There are two kinds. One is sins and one is offenses. So sin are basically impious activities, like activities which are against the Vedic injunctions that give you bad credit. So he was sinful, but he was not offensive. Offensive is worse than sin. Offenses are things that we commit against the Lord, like saying things like blaspheming the Lord, or blaspheming the devotees of the Lord, or blaspheming the Vedic literature. There's a list of offenses in Padma Puran which are considered detrimental to your devotional activities. So sins are easy to rectify, and there are like atonements for these different kinds of sins that can be done. But offenses are compared to like as if like there's a mad elephant who entered a garden. Whatever that mad elephant will do in that garden is what offenses can do to your whatever advancement you have made in your spiritual life. So generally devotees are more careful about offenses, committing offenses, like if there is some elevated Vaishnava blaspheming them or saying nonsense things about them. Those are more hurtful to our devotional life than sinful activities. Okay. Okay, I think maybe we'll stop after this verse. Here, Brahmani means Krishna consciousness. Thinking where to read. Yeah, let's read from here.
I can read Mataji.
Yes, Mataji, please go ahead.
One who knows perfectly well that everything belongs to Krishna, that he is the proprietor of everything, and that, therefore, everything is engaged in the service of the Lord, naturally has nothing to do with the results of his activities, whether virtuous or sinful. Even one's material body, being a gift of the Lord for carrying out a particular type of action, can be engaged in Krishna consciousness. It is then beyond contamination by sinful reactions, exactly as the lotus leaf, though remaining in the water, is not wet.
Right. Right. So again, the gist here is to understand that nothing belongs to us. We are not the proprietor. Everything belongs to Krishna, and then act accordingly. Right. Everything being a gift of the Lord for carrying out a particular type of action can be engaged in Krishna consciousness. So our intelligence actually lies in trying to see how the everyday activities that we are doing, how do we dovetail them to be Krishna conscious. And we can if we try. It's not easy because we are in this material conception, right? So we forget, but with practice, it's possible. Yeah, so the conclusion is that a person without Krishna consciousness acts according to the concept of the material body and senses, but a person in Krishna consciousness acts according to the knowledge that the body is the property of Krishna and should therefore be engaged in the service of Krishna. Yeah. Okay, I think we will stop here. Any further discussion points, comments, reflections from anyone?
The story that you're talking about, where he was talking about Narayan, his son. So his intent is different, and
Yeah.
that is something that need to be looked into rather than just what he's saying, right?
Yeah.
So on that basis, he should not be getting the liberation.
He didn't. He didn't immediately get liberation.
He shouldn't be even thought of getting liberation. That's what my thought.
So what this story tells us is that each word that Krishna commits to is true. Right? So when Krishna says, I bring what you lack and I persevere what you have, that's the bottom line. If Krishna says, at the time of death, if you remember me, you will attain my nature. He said that. So this is an example. So many stories in Bhagavatam. So we consider Gita as the law book, right? It has laws. But then Bhagavatam has the case studies referring to those laws. So this is a case study of that verse. So it's not saying that he immediately got liberation. He had to perfect his life. He had to perform austerities. He had to get into that consciousness where he could remember Krishna in the right intent. But since that statement is there, it has to be upheld.
And Prabhuji, just to add one another point, Hare Krishna Mataji,
Krishna.
if I may add, like in one of the occasions, like now Amarendra Prabhu is in here in Seattle, in one of his sessions, when I heard through YouTube, it says like the point related to this, like everybody in line, like of course sometimes even though we prepare for exams, we may not do good in exams also sometimes. So like similar case can happen, like even though you entire like either case can happen, right? Like entire your life, you may not think of Krishna, but end of the life you can think of Krishna, and vice versa. Like you practice entire life and you may not think about Krishna at the end of life. So right. But on the other case, like whoever prepared for that exam, So who is every day practicing and remembering Krishna. And Krishna is so merciful that he will make that, he will give that remembrance to that devotee so that he will think of Krishna. So that is also somewhere it was said, which was like quite sweet to hear.
Yeah, I mean, this is a very, very hopeful path. So, Shiva Prabhu, thank you for saying that, because Krishna says, I preserve what you have. So, in fact, Krishna says, whatever little advancement you make in this path is preserved. So, let's say you cannot complete, let's say, for whatever reason, whatever little advancement you have made, you will next life, because we don't choose our next life, right? We may become an ant, we may become whatever, right? In fact, again, in Bhagavatam, we have this example of Bharat Maharaj. He was a very pious king and very, very Krishna conscious throughout his whole life. So now contrast this to Ajamil's story. This is an example of what Shiva Prabhu mentioned. So this Bharat Maharaj was pious throughout his life, fully Krishna conscious. One day he was meditating on the bank of a river and he saw the mother of this pregnant deer getting killed by a lion. And in this process of fear and being very fearful, she gave birth to her deer, baby deer, right? And now the mother has been killed by the tiger or the lion, and so there's nobody to take care of the deer. So this Bharat Maharaj, being very compassionate, right? He loves whom Krishna loves. He now starts taking of this deer and starts treating him as his own child, and like a mother starts worrying about, did the deer eat, did the deer do this, that, like he's now absorbed from Krishna consciousness into deer consciousness. And he quits his life thinking of the deer. He gets a deer body the next life, but he remembers his whole past life, who he was, what he did, what he did not do. He remembers his whole past life. Next life, he again takes birth as somebody called Jad Bharat, and now he remembers and picks up from where he left off. He's now this mendicant who does lots of austerities. He even preaches this to this king who he works for, and this life he perfects his life and goes back. So this is a reverse example of Ajamil. But then, like Shiva Prabhu is saying, that whatever advancement we have made will not be lost. We may, ideally, we should try to, like Prabhupada says, you got this human form of life, you finish your business in this human form of life, because we don't know whatever next life will be, and get out of the material world. That is what Prabhupada says. But let's say for whatever reason we cannot, then not everything is lost. Like all these swamis that we hear about, right? How come they, like, I feel like for Indians, it is very easy to relate to this. Now, as we are doing this Western preaching, sometimes we are coming across people who are worshippers, like this Western girl I know. She works in a barista and she came across Lord Shiva and she worships Lord Shiva. How are these people coming across and making connection with divinity like that? There's something in the past life which is unfinished that they got a glimpse of, or did something little advancement, and now they are again brought back into this place where they can continue from there.
So Mataji, here one question comes up. In human life, we are conscious to everything. Like we understand the world, we understand God and everything.
Yeah.
But in animal life, it is not possible because the brain is not like that much.
Yeah.
Maybe they have a different thing we cannot
Yes.
understand, but we like in human body, whatever the karma, whether it is sinful or not sinful, or based on that we get like a liberation or not, and we pass to the animal life journey. Then in animal life journey, which things again brought us to the human life?
So my understanding is that there is no karma in animal life. So animal life is always progressive. So we started with one-celled amoeba, then fish, then two-legged, then like that, right? Progression, tree progression. So this progression is always upwards, right? There's no karma in animal life because animals don't have this, they are acting according to their nature. They don't have this higher intelligence of asking, is this right, is this wrong? A nature of a tiger, so a tiger will eat only carnivorous. If a tiger is hungry and starving, it will never say, okay, today let me eat grass, right? It will starve out of death. Only humans, if they don't find, let's say, if they don't find plant, they will say, okay, fish, no fish, okay, chicken. If no egg, chicken. Eventually, if no nothing, then let's eat a human, right? We act outside our psychophysical nature sometimes. Animals generally don't, even if it means that they will starve to death. So there's no karma in animal life, and animal or like non-human lives. So they are always progressing upwards. Only from human form of life, we can either go back or become a devata, or go all the way back into animal form of life, depending on how bad it was, and then from there you start again. So depending on which yoni we fall into, that's why it's dangerous. Like that's why it said, now that you have a human form of life, use it, get out of it. Even for devatas, it's very hard, because what is devata life? Devata life is enjoyment. When you are fully intoxicated in enjoyment, like let's say you have unlimited enjoyment. Do we ever, like when you are on a cruise, or let's say, I don't know, what is the highest level of human enjoyment? I don't know, cruise. When you are on a cruise, do you want to remember your groceries in Fred Meyer, or the electricity bill that you have to pay? Do you remember all that? No. It's very hard when we are enjoying to remember the mundane things. So when we are in a devata life, imagine the enjoyment they are experiencing is millions and thousands of times more than our enjoyment. So it's very hard for them to think about uh, remembering Krishna, because you are busy enjoying. So human form of life is the best platform to be Krishna conscious, because in lower species it's hard because of the body that we are in. In higher species it's hard because we are in this mode of enjoyment all the time. So that's why you have to exhaust your bank balance of enjoyment, whatever pious activities they are, when you are in a devata, come back to human form of life, and from here try to achieve Krishna consciousness.
Like not said anything in a like Bhagavad Gita, but usually people say that Ganga Snan kiya to paap dhul jate. So something
Sins.
So it's really true, or it's just myth?
No, it's not myth. I mean, when even in Bhagavatam it is said that when Bhagirathi took Ganga in his invoked Ganga, so she had two conditions. One of the condition was, I want somebody who can bear the force with which I am coming. And then second condition was, when all these people who are sinful will come and take bath, who is going to take away my sins? So those were her two conditions, and Bhagirathi said, okay, I will pray to Lord Shiva, because he is the one who can take your force to be the medium by which you can come to earth. And then for the second condition she had, he said that when pious people will take a dip in the Ganga, then your sinful reactions will go away. So impious people take a dip and deposit their sinful karma into Ganga. When pious people take a dip, they help Ganga make her clean again.
I heard something somewhere that in Ganga the sins are go away, but in Yamuna sins will add.
Oh really? I don't know. I haven't heard that. Like if a person takes a dip in Ganga, their sins will add?
The sins will go away in
Huh.
Ganga, but in Yamuna, if person like a even Yamuna, then sins will add.
Oh, I haven't heard about
So,
that.
like, yeah, because when the sins will go away, so the punya will increase.
Right.
So the to eliminate, because the punya will increase, then
Well, I
there is
don't
no
know if that
balance.
is true, because what our scriptures say is that um, impious and pious acts go in parallel. They don't counteract each other. So it's not, you cannot say that today I murdered someone, tomorrow let me pay for somebody's recovery, and those two cancel out. Those are like credit and debit accounts. They don't cancel each other. So if they are saying that by dipping in Yamuna you get more sins,
Sin, yeah.
I don't think that's authentic. Maybe we have to see where the source is, because our scriptures clearly say that that impious and pious activities, they are two separate bank accounts. You cannot like cancel each other out by, like, otherwise people will use it all the time. You do a
Yeah, that's
thievery
true.
here, and then you do make a donation here, and they cancel out. No, it doesn't work like that. As per my understanding, that's what I know, that you cannot cancel them. Anything else? Okay, then thank you everybody for joining. I hope everybody has a great rest of the week, and we'll see you all again next week. If possible, please try to join in person when everybody is here together in a sangha. It really helps and makes a big difference. But thank you for participating from online as well. See if you can start joining in person. Thank you so much, everyone. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Hare Krishna.